Okay, so this afternoon's class is VCSBT 9. It is one of our basic training classes. It is scheduling for supervisors. So the previous class, class 8, was how a user would do things like put in for time off and overtime and check their schedule. This class is going to look at how a supervisor would do things like approve time off and approve overtime and make adjustments to the schedule and so on. We're going to run this class based on the web portal. Just about all of our supervisor functions are available through the web portal now. So we encourage supervisors to be using the web portal for ease of use and for convenience, so that way they don't have to worry about having it installed at various workstations. What our syllabus for today is going to be focused on the general things that most supervisors do, based on our experience with multiple departments and kind of best practices. We'll look at the types of things that supervisors are normally given access to. For your individual department, that may vary a little bit. There may be some screens that you choose not to give your supervisors access to, or certain things you may not let them do. That's fine. There also may be additional screens you end up giving them access to, things that have to do with maybe replacement policy or open shifts. And those types of things are covered when we deal with how to set up and run open shifts or replacement policy. Since it's just you and I, you can certainly chime in whenever you like. If there's something that I'm talking about that doesn't pertain to your department, I can always move past it. What I'm also going to do is this class is normally scheduled to start off with a review of the View Schedules menu, but I think we'll skip past that because you were in this morning's training and you just got those items there. So we cover it in case somebody hadn't taken a user training, but unless you have any objection to that, I'll go ahead and bypass that portion of the training.
That's fine. I got 4 others here with me, but they've all been through the user course. So.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in here. So from a supervisor standpoint, a lot of the things that you would be doing will come from 2 main areas. Either the supervisor menu up at the top here has a handful of supervisory items in it, but you can also click on a schedule, on a daily schedule here, and that will zoom into a single shift view of that shift, and it will also give you a handful of items in your sidebar that are kind of specific to the person and the shift that you clicked. So those are the 2 main places that we will be focusing on today. And I have the items that we're going to cover. I have them kind of grouped together in like type screens. We've grouped them together to go over those. So first thing we'll start talking about is how to assign employees to jobs or other schedule details. So if we go back on our screen here and we take a look, there's an area here on the left for job assignments. So if we are going to assign people to jobs and have them display on our schedule or other schedule details, maybe things like cars, AEDs, certain weapons, things like that, we can assign those to employees by going under the supervisor menu. And we are going to use a screen here called Update Schedule Details. And this screen will let me go in and choose an employee that I want to work with, and then choose the type of item that I want to assign. So if I leave this on jobs, then I'll see over here the list of jobs that are available for me to assign to that person. And over here are the days that that person is working during this month here, in this case, October 2016. So if I wanted to assign jobs, I could take it from here and drag it over and drop it on whatever day we want to assign it. Okay, so I could drop one on today's date here. I can drop one over here and over here. And after I'm done assigning people to their jobs, I can switch to other types as well. So if I'm using this for cars, I can switch over to cars and assign those items. And anything else that you might have added to your system, radios, AEDs, tasers, anything along those lines if you're using those items. I can then go up here and I can switch to another employee if I need to. And I can assign them to the things that they need to be assigned to. Okay, so that's a simple drag and drop, and those items should show up here on our schedule once you've assigned them to people. Now, I think I'm working with a little bit of an older version here, so I may have an issue with those popping up at the moment, but those drag and drop features are the way you can assign those jobs and those other items to employees. Okay. Now, I think I remember from an earlier conversation, I think you said your department is not using scheduled details. Is that correct? Like cars and things like that?
No, we will be doing that.
Will you be using the job portion?
Yes, jobs, and then we have cars. I actually put badge numbers in, but I plan on having that populate automatically when you put them in schedule rotation.
Okay, so you're gonna pre-assign those items. Great, gotcha. Okay. All right. So then, for your day-to-day job assignments, that is the screen that you will use there. Okay, so that's update schedule details. Now, as far as some other schedule adjustments go, if we go back to our daily schedule here, we can also go in and change people's start and end times. So if I click on someone's name on the schedule here, one of the options that I get in my sidebar here is change schedule times. And this will allow me to change the start and end times for that employee, or really any employee that might be on a shift that day. So if we had multiple people, their names would all show up here. And I can change them one at a time for that day and that shift. So maybe today, for some reason, we need this person to come in at 0700 to 1700. So I can just change those hours there and I can hit save. And that's going to begin showing on the schedule next to the person's name. So if you have to make a schedule adjustment maybe for coverage, or maybe for something someone has to do that day, we need their hours to be adjusted just for that one day, then you can make that adjustment using that screen for a single day. Now, maybe there's a reason where you have to change their hours for a period of time. Maybe for the whole week we need to adjust your hours, or for a period longer than that. Well, we have an item under the Supervisor menu that we can use, and it's called Change Schedule Times here as well. And this is just slightly different in that it lets us set a date range and enter the start and end time that we want to push out for that date range. So I could say for this whole month, or I can choose one of the other preset date ranges there, or I can craft my own. I can say, from the 16th through the 28th. Then when I go to employees, I can choose one or more employee that I want to change times for. Okay, so I just mark them here. And then I can choose to only change their hours for certain shifts, which might be useful if your schedule has employees rotating from like days to nights. Well, I only want to change their hours when they're on day shift. Or I can just say all shifts if, regardless of what shift they're on, I want to change their hours. Or if they only work one shift, I don't have to worry about picking the exact shift. I just say all shifts because there would be only one shift that they would work. Then I enter my times, whatever they might be. And then I have the ability or the option to identify which days of the week. I could select every day of the week, or I could get more specific. Maybe their hours are only changing on Fridays for the next month, something like that. So I can set this up however I need to. And then I can hit save. And that will go ahead and build, or add, I should say, add those start and end times to the schedule for that person for that period of time. Okay. So that's two different ways that we can change people's start and end times, depending on whether you want to change it for a single day or for a date range. One last item to show you when we talk about start and end times, if I go back to the daily schedule and I want to remove the start and end times from next to this person, I want them to go back to their original start and end times. I click on their name and I go to change schedule times. Okay, and I can just go ahead and blank these out here and click save. And that will put it back the way that it was with no start and end times showing, which means that they are working the normal shift hours that day. Okay, any questions about changing employee start and end times, how to do it, or what scenarios you might use that in?
No.
Okay. All right, very good. Next item that we'll talk about, some additional schedule items here, is adding comments to the schedule. So we have the ability to add a comment to the schedule to show next to someone's name. And I can do that by clicking on their name. And when I get my schedule actions over here, I can use add comments. Now, kind of like with changing the employees' times, I get everybody from that shift lined up here. And I can go in and I can make comments for whichever employees I need to. So I just click in this area here. This is a free entry field. And when I'm done, I just hit save at the bottom. And that gets added to the schedule next to that person's name. So might be helpful to put comments in to identify what someone is doing on a given day, or make a note of something that we need to remember for them for the day. Those comments can be seen by anybody who has access to the daily schedule, whether it's on the web or on the desktop application. So you just want to keep in mind that they're not private comments. They are available to anyone who can view the schedule. And if you need to remove a comment, just click on that person again, go back to Add Comments, and just delete the comment and hit Save. And that will remove that comment from the schedule. Okay. Another item for making adjustments to your schedule is the ability to move an employee. So I don't know if this would ever happen in your department, but if I needed to move an employee from one shift to another, or from one day to another, I can click on their name. And I can go to Move Employee. And what you'll see here is the employee's name, the date, and the shift that we clicked on. And then down here, we identify where do we want to move them to. So maybe it's the same day, but a different shift. Or maybe it's a different day and a different shift. Once I have those items set, when I hit Save, that's going to move that person from that first shift they were on, shift 2, and move them to shift 1. And that's also going to send an email to that person letting them know that their schedule has been changed for that day. Okay, so that may be helpful for different scheduling purposes, whether you're adjusting somebody's schedule to work a different shift or to work a different day, possibly for purposes of attending training or something like that. Okay. And another item is view entry. If I click on a person and I hit view entry over here, it'll give me additional information about their schedule entries. So right now we just have work days in here, and I can see the information about that employee's work day, the date, the shift, the start and end times, all that stuff. If I click on a regular work day, there's not that much going on there, but if I find an employee who has maybe a time off entry or an overtime entry in the system, then when I click on that and I do view entry, I'll have their work day, but I'll also have information about the day off item. So that will let me see certain things like timestamps. When was this day off requested and by who? When was it approved and by who? You'll also be able to see in reason any reason text that might have been entered. Okay, so view entry lets you get a little more information about a schedule entry or a time off entry or an overtime entry, including things like timestamps. Okay. Any questions about those other schedule adjustment items, adding comments, moving employees, or viewing entries?
Nope.
Okay. All right, very good. So now we're going to start moving over to kind of the big ticket items here. First thing we're going to talk about is time off. Now, we saw in the earlier class how an employee can go in and request time off. Now we're going to look at how a supervisor could go in and potentially approve that time off or deny it. As far as approving time off goes, probably the best way for you to go about it is if I get notification that there's a day off in the system, I want to go to that day and find that shift that the person requested off. And I can see it here highlighted, and I can see VAC for vacation and the question mark. And if I click on it, I'm going to get my options over here, and those are going to include an item for change time off. So I look at my shift, maybe I have to take into consideration certain staffing, right? Well, if you're using minimum staffing in our system, you can always click this validate button to have the system check your staffing first to make sure that you're not already below minimums. And actually, I'll take one step back. You can even do it from this screen here. You can click validate, and if you do have a shift that is below its minimums, it will change to whatever color was set for a failing shift. Okay, but after I've made the decision, that we do have enough people and I am going to go ahead and approve this, I can click on the entry and go to that change time off item. And this will bring up the information that the employee submitted when they requested the time off. It's got the date, the shift, they want the entire day, they want to take vacation time. We have a request, it's a request, I can add comments to it, and things like that. So I can make any adjustments that I need to, but I can also change the status from here. So I can go from request to approve or deny right from here. I can also add comments if I need to. So maybe if I'm denying it, I want to make a note that I'm denying it because of staffing levels or something. And down here, email notification will automatically show send to default. So we are automatically going to notify the whoever was set up as your default recipients. Usually that includes the employee themselves. So after I'm done making my changes, I hit save. And then that will change that request to an approved day off. So it will likely change color depending on how it was set up for your department. And then VAC remains, the question mark goes away. It's no longer a requested vacation day. It is now approved. Okay, so that's the most common way for approving time off. By going to the shift, that allows you to review what else is going on that day. Do I have other people off? Do I have people who are on training or adjusted schedules that I need to consider when I am going to decide if I want to approve this time off or not? Okay. Now, that's great for situations where the employee submits a request, but what if the employee can't submit a request for some reason? Perhaps the person is calling out sick and they can't put in the request themselves. Well, as a supervisor, I can go to our schedule here. I can click on the person's name who's calling out sick. And I can go over here to request time off. And this will allow me to fill in the information here for that employee. Their name's already there. The date and the shift have already been populated for us based on where we clicked. And then I can say, well, are they going to be out the whole day? Or maybe they're calling out for a partial day. You know, they have to go to the doctor, so they're going to miss the first couple of hours, but they'll be coming in late. Or they have to leave early for a doctor's appointment, something like that. So I can select whatever part of day applies, and then I can choose the type of time that they plan on using. And then status, as a supervisor, I can bypass the request status and go right to approved. I don't have to wait for, you know, I don't have to put it in as a request first and then go back in and approve it. I can just go ahead and make it approved. Space here for comments if I want to add some information about the request, you know, if I want to make a note that they called out or whatever it might be. And then again, we will automatically send those emails to the defaults. So I can go ahead and hit save. If the employee doesn't have enough time in their bank, we'll get that warning, and it will allow you to choose if you want to continue. You can either say no and go back and maybe choose a different type of time, or yes and continue on. And that will add that to our schedule, showing comp over here and highlighting it in whatever color was used for approved comp time. And finally, in addition to being able to edit a day off entry, you can also delete one. So if this person, maybe they called out sick because their kid was sick and they had nobody to watch them, but then they found somebody to watch them, and they say, you know what, I am going to come in today. You can click on that entry, and you will get an option here for delete time off. And if you click that, it'll just ask you to confirm, are you sure you want to remove this time off record? And you can either cancel it or remove it. And now that person is back to being scheduled to work their regular day. That time off goes back into their bank. If it was already approved, it will be returned to their bank. Okay. So in dealing with time off, that's how you can either approve a request that comes in or put somebody on time off who maybe calls in and can't do it themselves. And then how you can delete a day off entry that maybe is no longer needed in the system. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about those items, working with time off, approving, entering, deleting?
All set.
Perfect. Okay, so moving on from time off, now we're going to take a look at overtime. And we're going to find that overtime is very similar to time off. So number one, if I get a request, somebody put in a time off, an overtime request, and I need to go in and approve it. One thing I can do is I can go to the day that the time or overtime request was for, in this case yesterday, and I can find the shift that it was on right here. And I see it's an overtime entry. It's got that color we used for overtime. It's got the question mark showing that it's requested. And again, I can click on it. And I'll have an option here for change overtime. And just like with time off, this is going to bring up all the information that that the user submitted when they put in the request. Names there, date, shift, reason, pay type, start time, end time, number of hours. As a supervisor, I can adjust any of these if need be. And I can change the status down here from request to approved. Again, I have a spot for comments if I need to add any additional comments to it. And email notification will be set to automatically send to default. Once I'm done making adjustments, I go ahead and I hit save. And that's going to update our schedule here. It's going to remove the question mark from next to that entry. So we know it's no longer requested, it is now an approved overtime entry. Okay, so that is how we can approve an overtime request. Now, it's possible, again, that you don't, you have a situation where you want to place somebody on overtime without, waiting for the person to submit the request. Maybe you're scheduling someone to come in on a shift and fill that shift in, and we need to add overtime to it. So the most basic way to go ahead and do that is to click in the shift here. And you'll get an item down here for schedule overtime. And we will just go ahead and fill this information out, the same information that would have been entered by the employee. So I choose their name from the list here, the person who said that they're going to work the overtime. The date and the shift are already here based on where I clicked. The reason, I can go ahead and choose that. So maybe it's a staffing shortage. And how are they going to be paid, cash or comp? And then I can enter the times. If it's going to be the whole shift, I can enter those hours, or if it's going to be partial, I can enter that as well. The system will recalculate the hours here for me, so I don't have to worry about that. And again, as a supervisor, I can go right to the approved status. I don't have to put it in as a request first and then approve it. I just make it approved right here. I can add comments, maybe who they're filling in for, or whatever we might need to add there. Email will automatically notify the defaults. Usually that includes the employee themselves as a confirmation. And we hit save. And that will place them on the schedule with an overtime entry. Okay. So that's how you can go ahead and place someone on the schedule for overtime. As I mentioned earlier, if your department is using specific tools for overtime, like replacement policy or open shifts, the use of those will be covered during the classes that deal with those topics. Okay, and just like with time off, if for some reason we have to remove an overtime entry, maybe it was entered and then it turned out the person who was originally supposed to work was going to be able to come in, so we no longer need you to work that overtime. Well, I can click on the person's name, and I can go to, or click on the overtime entry, I should say, and I can go to delete overtime. And that will remove that entry. It'll give us the opportunity to cancel or go ahead and remove it. And that gets rid of that overtime entry, takes it off of our schedule. It's no longer in there, especially for payroll purposes if you are going to be reporting to payroll. Okay. One additional item that I want to show you for overtime. Maybe there's a bunch of overtime entries that you need to go through and approve. You know, a bunch of people had late calls and things. Maybe you were out for a day or two, and now you come back and find these entries, and you don't want to go day to day and shift to shift to approve them. Well, we have a tool in the Supervisor menu, and it's called Manage Overtime. And Manage Overtime lets us set a date range. And we have some optional filters here, which employee, which reason, which group, or we can leave them as all. And then status, we can set this to just show the requests. Maybe I'm not interested in overtime, it's already been approved. I just want to see, are there any requests out there that require my attention? And if I go ahead and hit search, any overtime entries that meet these requirements here will show up here. Status, employee name, date, shift, reason, start time, end time, number of hours. So I can either go down the list one at a time and change the status using the drop-down, or these buttons here that say Global Change Entries. These buttons will change the status of all the entries below. So I can deny everything or approve everything. Nothing actually takes effect until you click Save. So if you hit a button by accident, you know, that changes all the statuses to denied or something like that. It's okay. You don't have to panic. You can always just exit out of the screen or hit search again, and that'll bring everything back to its original status. Nothing actually happens until you click the Save button here. Now that I saved it, that's disappeared because that no longer meets the status requirement. I do have other options for statuses. I could show, approved or denied. I could show everything. And you'll see those items show up there as approved. Okay. We do have the same tool under Supervisor for time off. We have Manage Overtime. We also have Manage Time Off. I find this is used a little less often, especially if we are dealing with people who are concerned with minimum staffing levels. Because while I might see a list of time off entries here, that doesn't really tell me what else is going on in my shift. So I may need to go and look at the shift as well to see who else is working that day. But the tool is there if there are portions of your department where minimum staffing is not necessarily a concern. Or even if you just want to use the tool to say, let's check the rest of the year, are there any requests that have not been approved yet? If I hit search and nothing comes back, then I know that we're okay. I've gotten all of the requests for the rest of the year. So that is available. Like I said, I don't know to what extent you would use it to actually approve the time off, but it could be helpful to find entries that still need to be addressed. Okay. So any questions on overtime, either approving it or adding it to the schedule for someone, or deleting overtime from the schedule? Any questions on any of those items?
No.
Okay. Okay, moving on then to switches, substitutions, things like that. I'm going to go back to view schedule here and go back to our daily schedule. And if we had two employees that were scheduled to work but wanted to switch with each other, we have the option, as we saw earlier in the user class, to allow users to request a switch. And we'll look at how to approve that in just a moment. But a supervisor can also go ahead and just enter it into the system if the employees maybe can't submit a request for some reason, or maybe we just don't allow them to. So to enter it as a supervisor for the employees, I would click on one of the employees on the day that they were looking to switch off of. Oops, hold on one second. Here, I'll do this. Click on this person here, and I will do substitute, switch, reciprocate. And when we go in here, we have a couple of different options. And depending on kind of how your department handles these items will kind of dictate which one you use. Reciprocate is like an official schedule change. We're officially changing your schedule. And that's important to note because that may affect things like hours worked or shift differential, things like that. So this is an actual change of the schedule where the one shift now belongs to me and my shift belongs to another employee. That's different from a switch. It looks exactly the same, but a switch is an unofficial schedule change. So we're not making an official schedule change. So I'm working for you today, and you're working for me, but I still own my original shift. You still own your original shift. For reporting purposes, we would show you as having those hours earned on the day you were supposed to work. And that would not have any effect on things like shift differential. Substitute is just like switch in that it's not an official change to the schedule, but it is open-ended. So I would say, okay, you're going to work for me today, and I'll pay you back sometime down the line. We'll figure it out later. Again, not an official change to the schedule. The original person who was supposed to be there still owns those hours. Any shift diff would not be affected by that. And then finally, probably the least common used of the options is a substitution for time, where we say you're going to work for me today, and I'm going to deposit. You're going to take some time from my bank to kind of make up for you working for me today. So instead of you paying me back another day, maybe you're just going to take some of my comp time or something like that. Again, probably the least common out of all of them. So depending on how your department functions will dictate which one of these you will use. If you're using switch and or substitute, those are the ones that you can allow your employees to request through that page we saw during the morning session. If you are doing reciprocate, if you're doing an official change to the schedule, that can only be done through this screen. It must be entered by a supervisor or someone who has access to this screen for the people who are going to work it. Okay, so to fill it out, I choose the proper action here. We'll say it's going to be a switch. I have the first employee, the date they're working, and the shift they're working. And then I choose the second employee, the date that they're working, and the shift that they're working will populate there. If that shift field is blank, it means that person is not working on the day that you're trying to do the switch for. And if you hit save, that's going to apply that switch. And a switch looks like this. We have the first person who's going to be working that day and who they're working for. And we have the other person who's working that day and who they're working for. So that's how a switch or a substitute or a reciprocate would show on the schedule.
Will that let us, so would I be able to switch with somebody for their RDO or for the regular day off? So I'm going to work their day off and how do I want to put that?
I'm going to work for them on my day off.
So, so I'm supposed to work today, and you're off, and you're going to work for me?
Correct.
Yeah, so if it's open-ended like that, like if you don't know when I'm going to pay you back yet?
It'll be on their day off, your next day
off.
It'd be,
Need to make up the day in like a couple weeks.
No, it'll be on their day off. Yeah, it's the same pay. It's got to be with the same pay.
Oh, what I'm saying is that, but this is
we allow people to swap shift for an RDO, so trying to think of the easiest way to explain it. But
I need Monday off, and Glenn's off Monday, and then I'll just switch my RDO from Monday to Thursday because he's off Thursday. So I'll work Monday, and then he'll work Thursday or whatever. Catch all that.
So I would, the other employee would be working a straight time double.
I'm working
to
first
accommodate
shift,
that day off.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think this might be it here. So if this person here, Claire, is working on 10/20, and that's somebody's day off who's going to work for her, right? That's Chaz's day off. So Chaz says he'll work 10/20, and then Claire will get the day off. Is that kind of what you guys are talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's half of it, and then somewhere later in that week, then Claire's got to work one of Chaz's shifts somewhere.
Okay, right. So substitute is open-ended. So that says we don't know when Claire's going to pay Chaz back. If we know right now, then it's either switch or reciprocate, and we would say, okay, Claire's working on 10/20, and Chaz is off on 10/20, and then Chaz is working on whatever 10/22, and Claire's off that day, and she's going to work Chaz's shift. Now, Chaz happens to not be working that day, but I think that would just be a matter of picking the right day for you guys. Where if Claire's working on 10/20, and that's Chaz's day off, then Chaz will work for her on 10/20, and she'll work for him on whatever day he's working. That may happen to be her day off.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
I think so. I think we'll have to test it out and see what happens, see if we can implode.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, open-ended, a substitute. We don't know when the other person's going to pay them back. Switch is more close-ended. We have both parts of it. We're going to put it all in right now. Okay. Any other questions on that at the moment?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, great. So that's how a supervisor can put it on the schedule for the employees. Now, going back to what we looked at this morning, if you let your employees submit the requests online, and I, as a supervisor, I get a notification that 2 people are looking to switch, and I want to go ahead and approve it, I can go under the Supervisor menu, and I can go to Manage Switch Requests. And I set a date range here to look for the switches, and I hit refresh. And if we find any requests, they'll be listed here. You'll get the status, the first person's name, the date that they're working, the shift that they're working, the second person's name, and then if it's a full switch, the date that they're working and the date that they were scheduled to work and the shift that they were scheduled to work. If it's a substitute, if it's an open-ended, this part won't be filled in because we don't know when, you know, Lance is going to pay him back yet. So that part will be empty. And then you can see who submitted the request and when. I can click this blue arrow here to get a little more information about it, including things like what skill set, what validation skill set do these 2 people have in common that allowed them to be able to do this switch. I mentioned earlier that they have to have a common skill set. So these 2 actually both have patrol and OIC, so they were allowed to do this switch. If one person was patrol and the other was OIC, it would not have allowed this request to go through. Okay, so I have the information here, and at this point I can choose to either approve this switch or delete it if I just want to go ahead and remove it from the system. Okay, if I hit approve, the switch request has been approved. It changes the status right here. And if we go back to our schedule, you will see it populates our schedule with that switch information. Okay. So that's how you can approve a switch that a user may have requested. Now, you may also have a situation where 2 people decide that they want to switch, and then for some reason it's not going to happen. They decide, you know what, let's not switch. We'll just work our own shifts. Well, you can undo that by going to either part of the switch on the schedule. Just go ahead, find it, and click on it. And you will get an option over here for undo switch. And if we click that, that'll ask us, are you sure you want to undo the switch between this person and this person? And we can either hit cancel or we can hit undo. And if we hit undo, that'll put everyone back where they were and remove the notes about the switch. Okay. So those are options for switches. Does anybody have any questions on that, either entering it for someone as a supervisor or approving a request or undoing a switch that's no longer going to take place?
No.
Okay, very good. Okay. The last topic to cover today is some reporting features. Now, if everybody there was there this morning, you'll remember that there are some reports under the employee menu that just deal with the individual themselves. Like I can see my own balance of time off right here. But under the reports section, these reports let us run a report for multiple people. So as a supervisor, these reports may be that much more useful. So in other words, if I wanted to run a balance of time off report here, I could do it for all employees or multiple employees. Or maybe I just want to do it for a certain group of employees. I can filter here by clicking in this area here where it says group. If I double click, if I just want all the people on squad A, I can start typing SQDA, and if I click out of there, that'll just bring up those people there. So maybe I'm in charge of squad A and I'm only interested in running this report right now for squad A. So I can filter by group, and then I can hit all to mark them all and hit OK. Then I can go on to reasons. Which types of time off do I want to see balances for? Maybe it's vacation, personal, sick, and comp. And I hit OK. And then I hit search, and that's going to generate that report for us. I'll get each person's name here, the type of time, how much they've been given, how much they've used, what their balance is, and what the units that that time off is measured in, hours or possibly days. Okay, we have our pie chart here. I can review that. I can change it to a bar graph if I like. I can save the image. I can minimize the image and just focus on the report itself. And I have the ability to save it as a PDF or an Excel. So if I need to print it out or save it for any reason, I can do that from here. Okay. Usually supervisors from kind of a at least initial standpoint have access to the same types of reports that users have. They just usually can run it for more people than just themselves. So usually they have the balance of time off report, the time off activity report, the overtime activity report, and the administrative days report. And those all run in a pretty similar fashion, with setting your date range, choose your employees, choose your reasons. Maybe there's some additional filters there, and then just going ahead and running the search. Okay, so most of those reports work in a very similar fashion. The only one that's a little bit different, and again, this was kind of mentioned this morning, is that employee statistical report. This is great for users that they can go in and kind of see a bunch of information about themselves at once. But I know a lot of places where supervisors like this as well, especially if they're maybe working on completing some type of review for that employee. If I choose their name here, I can see a bunch of information for them all in one place. I can see their balances, their time off activity, their overtime activity, their administrative days log, their work trends, their extra duty, and any time sell back if your department allows that. Okay. So that employee statistical report stands out as it's run just a little bit differently. It's just one person at a time, but you can also select the date range there as well. Okay. So those are kind of a brief glance at the reports there. You can certainly, when you get access to the program, get on there, take a look at the reports, play around with them, but they're all pretty easy to run. It's pretty basic to go ahead and set them up and generate those. Does anybody have any questions about the reports, about what's on them, how to run them?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Very good. Well, that's the last topic for our basic supervisor training. Does anybody have any questions on anything that we covered? Those adjusting of schedules, you know, adding schedule details, adjusting people's start and end times, adding comments, moving employees around, or anything with time off, approving, adding, deleting time off, overtime, approving, adding, deleting overtime, anything with switches or substitutions, how to assign them, how to approve them, how to undo them. Any of those topics that anybody needs me to go over again, or you know, any questions you might have on any of those at this point?
Can you go over putting in an open-ended or open overtime request? Something to the, what is it, the overtime board?
Oh, so like posting an open shift, you mean?
Correct.
Sure. So open shifts are ways that we can post overtime that we know we need someone to go ahead and fill. So we'll identify what date and time we need someone, and then the employees can go into the open shift screen and see what's available and sign up for what they're interested in. To go ahead and create an open shift, or, you know, to post one for people to sign up for it, we can do that. We can do that by going under the Supervisor menu. And right here we have Add, Update, Open Shifts. Okay, so this screen lets us put in the specifics about the open or the overtime that we're looking to fill. So first thing I do is I choose the shift. Where do we need the overtime? Maybe it's on shift number 1. And then we have skill. What type of person can sign up for this open shift? Do we need a dispatcher, an officer, a supervisor? These obviously will differ for your department depending on what you've set up there. I'm going to go ahead and say officer for right now. The dates, I can make this open shift for a single day. Maybe we need one for tomorrow. Or I could set a date range as well. And then we have our times. These are going to default to the hours of our shift. But I can make adjustments if need be. Maybe we don't need the whole shift covered. Maybe we only need a couple of hours. Well, I can go in and adjust the start and end time if need be. The hours field will automatically recalculate for you based on the start and end time. So you don't have to worry about that field there. The next couple of fields are optional. If there's a job associated with this overtime, you can select it there. Call for service or reference number if you wanted to put that in there. But then reason, this is a required field. We're going to choose what's the reason for this overtime. So maybe it's because we have a staffing shortage. Comments lets me add a comment. A little information maybe about you know, why we need this open shift or something like that. And then number needed, I can identify, do we need one person or do we need more? Maybe we need 2 people. Okay, now at this point there's a couple of different options available as far as whether or not we want to send notifications. Do you know, do you guys plan on just posting them and letting people go and look on the page and see what's available? Or do you plan on notifying the employees that new things have been posted?
We'd like to send a notification to everyone.
Okay, perfect. So then you're going to leave that checkbox closed that says send notification. And we're going to go ahead and click save. And that's going to save our open shift automatically, regardless of what the next step we take is. And then it's going to give us some options for how we want to notify people. So we have two different ways that we can notify people. The first one here called general notification. This just lets us pick and choose who we want to send a text message to. We can just mark, everybody individually, or we can hit all and mark everybody on the list. That's going to notify them regardless of whether they may qualify for that assignment or not. They'll get a notification saying that there was a new open shift posted to the web. The other option is using what we call replacement policy to take a list of people's names and narrow it down to just the people who could possibly work that shift and only notifying those people. So we might filter out, based on our replacement policy rules, maybe we filter out the people that are already working, or maybe we filter out people who are on certain types of time off that day, or who would have too many hours in a row. And we don't bother to send them a text because they wouldn't be a good fit for that open shift. We only text the people who would be a potential match for that open shift. So I don't know if you've discussed this with anyone during a previous class, but do you have an idea which one of those two you would be doing in your department?
We probably do it by replacement policy, just so only the people that are eligible to get the overtime are going to get the notice.
Perfect. Okay. So then here you're going to switch the radio button to replacement policy notification. This right here, this will be included in the text message. You can go ahead and let people know when you're going to award this. So, I can say I'm going to award it tomorrow at 3, or I can change that. I can say, I'm going to go ahead and award this, today at, 5 p.m. So that information gets included when they get that text message, so that way they know, when they need to go ahead and sign up for it by. All this information here is pre-populated based on the open shift we created. And for rules, you're going to use advanced, and you're just going to pick the set of rules that were created for, for your department to use with this. So maybe it's this patrol OT rule set. And then I'm going to hit Find Now, and that's going to generate our list of people that we would notify. I'm not 100% sure this will return any results. It did, okay. So these are all the people that are going to get the text. Again, that'll be narrowed down based on, from the original list, we'll knock people out who wouldn't be eligible for it. And you would just come down here and hit Send to Mobile. And when we go ahead and click that button, in my case, the company profile is not set up to be able to send the text messages on our test database here, but that would just give you a notification saying that your text messages are being sent. And what will then happen is the users will get a text message with information about there being an open shift available for them to sign up for. It'll have a link in it that they can tap, and that link will bring them to a web page that they can then, they'll have buttons there that say yes, they're interested, or no, I'm not interested, and it will allow them to pick their pay type from there as well. So they'll be able to go ahead, say I'm interested, I'm not interested, and then when you go in to award that open shift, you'll see the people who replied back, yes, they're interested, and they'll be listed in the order that they should be given that open shift based on their position on your list. Okay. Is everybody good on that? Do you want me to run through that one more time without stopping for the questions on how to do it? Or are you good on that?
We're good with that.
Good with that? Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Anything that I covered in this session, or maybe anything, since it's just you guys, you can kind of take advantage of it. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you guys plan to use from a supervisor standpoint, or anything else you'd like to see?
I think that'll do it.
Okay, great. Very good. Well, if there's no other questions for today, then I thank you all for your time. Don't forget to sign up for our additional classes. We have some advanced training classes that cover all of our modules, how to set them up, how to use them, things like extra duty, payroll, things of that nature. And don't forget about our technical support helpouts. If you have any support questions, you can get a half-hour technical support helpout, or you can sign up for a training helpout for some one-on-one time with a trainer to cover any topics you need additional help with. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.